Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the LDARC EX8. This is an 8-channel, kind of a budget entry sort of remote, and it's a game style, and if you know me, I'm a pincher, and I also prefer a game style pad. And one of the reasons why I prefer a game style pad is for me, ergonomically, specifically with my elbows and my shoulder width, that if there's a little bit of an angle in, as there's less here. I'll show you another radio in a minute. But to me, it's just more comfortable because when you've got a bigger or wider radio, you tend to get your elbows in here or your wrists have to bow out. So these are more comfortable to me. But this is kind of a starter or, like I said, a budget or entry level sort of radio. And unfortunately, I can't recommend this one. For just a little bit more, $30 more, I would have to recommend that you get the Jumper T-Lite instead. There's a number of features and things that I think you're going to need, and that's why I'm recommending that instead of this. So we'll get to those things, the shortcomings of this one, but let's cover this first. There'll be links in the video description to both of these, but the top link is going to be to the Jumper T-Lite because that's the one I think you should have. It does come in a nice little case. Got this strap to hold things down, and it's got two of these little foam stick protectors so that you don't break your sticks. But that's really all it comes with. Unfortunately with this case, the T-Lite doesn't fit in there real well with the antenna on here, but if you take the antenna off, it fits in there quite nicely. So if you're looking for a case, I'll see if the case is just available on the Makerfire website. For those of you that follow the channel, you know that I'm not necessarily a gimbal snob, so these feel fine. The spring tension would work for me, and it doesn't appear that though we have any sort of spring tensioning. Yes, I have had it open. I did not see on the back of the gimbals where it had traditional sort of spring tensioning. But for me, this tension would work. That's something you just don't get with this one, is the ability to adjust the spring tension. It does have a little bit of a rough edge here around the side of the plastic. The plastic feels fine. It's about what you would expect. The antenna is not removable. We have a USB-C port right up here, which we can use to charge the battery. And then we have a trainer port. We have 3 position switches across the top, except for the last switch, SWA. That's just a 2-position switch. And then we have this roller, which is how we manipulate the items on the screen. And we have our on button right here. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and pop the back. We have a little jack here on the back too. I suspect that is for a 3D printed mount that you could put one of those little screens, a little watch type of screen on, which I do have, but I don't have out at the moment. The battery that it comes with is right here. You can see that's a 1S 600 milliamp battery, and it plugs in with that older style of micro GST. That was my first complaint right out of the box, was there's no way that, well, I don't know if there's no way. I had to use a pair of needle nose to get the battery plugged in, and I thought that was a little bit of a miss in design. You know, you should be able to plug in the battery with relative ease. You shouldn't necessarily need a tool. I needed the tool. Tweezers might work, and you could definitely get a bigger battery in there if you chose to have more runtime. I suspect you'll get probably an hour and a half to 2 hours of constant runtime with this size of battery. Now let's turn it on. So as you can see there, it doesn't appear to run OpenTX. It seems to have some custom firmware that's on there, and we get some RGB lights down here in the scroll wheel, which is kind of a nice effect. But we scroll through the wheel, and you can see it's selecting different elements on the screen. And you can see there we're currently in D16 mode. That's FrSky Protocol, EU. If we go in here, you see we have D16. We click that. Now we can go to SFH2S, and we can go to LBT D16. And that's all it's got. We can adjust. Oh, sorry, I have hit the enter button, so it restarts after you do that. I guess it's a good thing to note right off the bat. We do have different power levels, but it's just 25 and 100 milliwatts. And then we go down to bind when we're all set to bind with our quad. And then we can go back up here to the up, and we click again. And we can go in here to this little entry. Hopefully you can see the screen okay. And that is where you can just type in any old name that you want to. Let's see what else here. We've got our menu system here where we've got the monitor to where you can see the channels and the sticks move. As you can see there, it's moving around. We can reverse the channels if you needed to do that for whatever reason. We used to have to do that with DSMX Maybe you don't anymore. I haven't used DSMX in a long time. These are the RGB settings where you can change some of the colors that are on this. You can see that you just change the numerical values and you get different colors. Here we have our LCD settings. So we've got your contrast, your brightness, your backlight timeout, your dark mode. I would probably use the dark mode just to save battery life, but that's a personal preference. You can also turn down the brightness. Then we have our TX settings, which you can go into where stick here, where you can change it from mode 1 to mode 2, or you can go into calibrate. That's where you get your stick ends. If you do calibrate these things, and this is kind of universal for all radios, don't press hard in the corners. You just want to get it to the corner as you calibrate. You don't want to jam it in the corner because when you fly, well, unless you fly this way, unless you really push hard on the stick to get in the corners, you don't want to calibrate your sticks that way. You want your endpoint just to be full 100% in the corners. You don't want to be pressing real hard. I've even seen people use one little finger just to make sure they get it just in those corners. And then we also have the about here, which doesn't tell us a whole lot. Oddly enough, inside the case, this URL that they have, it's a funny little thing, does not have the triple W. So you do have to have the triple W to get to the website, which I wouldn't say you need to go to that website because it's a single slide presentation about the radio. There's not much there to talk about otherwise. It just tells you some of the basic specs that we've already been through here. By the way, the LCD that is in here is 128 by 64, and it has two chips in it, the CC2500 and the RFX 2401C. And that's one of the limitations, is that chipset. I really think they ought to have the 4-in-1 in here, because if you don't have a 4-in-1, you can't fly things like this that have SPI receivers inside them. I'm a micro channel, so I do a lot of micros. Maybe you want to fly a whoop. Most whoops, if not all whoops, I guess up to a certain size, they're running D8 modes, with this radio can't do either. Which is one of the reasons why I don't recommend this, is that you're very limited into what you can be running this radio with. There's nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't have some of the features that you can get with the Jumper T-Lite. Like, one of them that I think is very, very important for people starting out is the simple fact that you can't connect this to a computer and run it for a controller for a simulator, for a computer simulator, so you can start to get your feel for FPV via computer. So that's crash free, doesn't cost you anything. You can get adjusted a little bit. Simulators, they've gotten a lot better, but they don't fly quite like real life, at least in my experience. This can't do that. The Jumper T-Lite has Hall sensor gimbals, so technically they should be smoother and last longer for a longer period of time. The T-Lite is also running OpenTX, so you can get any benefits of running OpenTX on this. This is running something apparently custom. I don't know what it is. It didn't even tell us in the about, so I presume it's not OpenTX. It doesn't act like OpenTX in any way, shape, or form. It does have a removable antenna, so if you happen to get on your journey where you're packing out to fly, you can remove the antenna and it won't break off, whereas you've got to make sure you secure this down. It does come with a case that should secure it down, but if you drop the radio or something like that, replacing this is going to be a little bit more of a big deal versus this. It's going to take a pretty severe drop to damage the SMA, where you'd have to actually crack open the radio to repair that fix. Also, I need to grab my other Jumper T-Lite. Yes, I have two. They're my daily drivers. This does not have any external module support. So if you wanted to do something fun and fancy and open source with extreme range and packet rate, which means faster control, Express LRS, again, we can't do it with this. And that's why at this time, even though this radio would service you in those specific cases where it does work with D16 or the other protocol that it has, this is going to support not only those, but so many more. And it has those other features that we already touched on that will allow you to grow with the hobby. And the cost is about $30 more. And that cost difference could stop some people. But I would highly encourage you to save for that extra period of time, whatever it is, to get that extra $30 so that you could get the Jumper T-Lite. One, because you can start out on a computer, so you're not crashing and having to spend more money on repairing. You can start and get adjusted to FPV with the computer. Versus this one, you're going right out and just start to fly and crash. And while crashing is part of this hobby, and paying for those repairs after we crash is one of the painful things about the joy of this hobby, we can avoid that if we start, well, we can avoid it to a degree if we start with a computer simulator. Not to mention, the other things of OpenTX, Hall sensor gimbals, and external module support. So that is why, while the EX8 is close, I think if it could connect to a computer and it could do D8 mode, I'd be more likely to support this. But because of those two basic features and the others that I mentioned in the Jumper T-Lite, please get the Jumper T-Lite. Don't get the EX8. Another thing, Jumper has service centers, and I know of one in the United States. Now, I don't know about other countries and continents on how many service centers they have globally, but I don't know that LDARC has service centers, and if they do, I have never dealt with them, so I can't report how that works out. So that's one of the features that you might want to consider. Hopefully you found that useful. Again, I just want to drive this home. Top link will be to the Jumper T-Lite. That is the radio that I use on a daily basis. And I support you using this radio. I think you'll get a lot further in this hobby with this radio, and you'll get started cheaper than if you were to buy the EX8. And if you want to buy the Jumper T-Lite, or if you want to buy the EX8, spend your money where you like. You can use code Nick Burns in the coupon code area of the order on the Maker Faire website, and you'll get 5% off to kind of ease your wallet there a little bit more. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know down in that comment section. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.